Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm so glad that you've joined me again this week for these group coaching calls. And it's fun to have you on live. And I appreciate those who aren't able to make it on live to watch the replays. I do welcome your questions and comments. So we're just going to start right in today. Is what you are drinking cleansing or polluting? I'm Erleen Tilton, and I feel so happy to be able to be here to share this information with you because I feel like some of these things are really, really important and definitely foundational for our health and wellness. So as we go through this, we're going to learn about the good and the bad and the ugly when it comes to drinks in general. And guess what? We are going to start with the ugly and then we'll end up with the good. Does that sound good? So a recent article that I read said that 45% of Americans' intake of sugar comes from drinks. To me, that just blew me away. I thought, wow, if people would just give up all the things that they're drinking, not only the cost, but the sugar, as well as the health problems that are created from all of these unhealthy drinks. But if we just look at the sugar content, wow, that is a lot of sugar. And if you look at the right, 25 teaspoons of sugar in that little Slurpee, icy, whatever that is. Wow. So you can see that Americans are getting a lot of sugar in their drinks. Now, this isn't even including all the sweets people eat and all the carbs that they're getting through their grains. So last week, we talked a lot about the grain carbs. We're really going to dive into the sugar carbs today and see how we can actually eliminate a lot of the drinks that people are drinking, as well as a lot of the sugar that people are taking in and day out. So first, what's wrong with sugar? Well, again, like last week, we went into a little bit of this, but if we look at sugar, sugar beets, sugar cane, and corn, where most of the sugar comes from in the US today, is all genetically modified. And not only that, we have it's refined with our nutrients stripped, it's bleached, and with the overconsumption, it basically is unabsorbable, which sits there causing inflammation and fermentation in the gut. Just know that our guts basically have limitations on how much carbohydrate they can handle. And so when we overconsume with not only drinks, but with all the other foods that we eat in a day, we are creating that leaky gut, which is the perforations in our gut lining. It creates all kinds of digestive disorders, dysfunctions, as well as our autoimmune issues. And that's one thing that's wrong with sugar. But additionally, if we can see that it affects our brain, our heart, our liver, our joints, specifically for our brain, it stimulates excess dopamine. And this is crucial to understand because this is where it works with our brain and those mood fluctuations, even depression, schizophrenia, Parkinson's, any type of mental disorders. For our heart, it increases the risk of heart disease. And for our liver, blood sugar fluctuations, cirrhosis, fatty liver, and then it deposits excess acid crystals in our joints and muscles. And that's what creates the inflammation. Most people suffer with such amount of inflammation in their bodies simply because they're intaking too many carbs during the day through the grain carbs and the sugar carbs. So if you look at the ingredients in anything that you pick up, you might note that there is several names for sugar. And we need to really be careful and know about this. And I'm not going to go over all of these, but just look at that list. There's a lot of different names for sugar, and they could come in lots of different forms. So beware of all the different names of sugar when you're looking at ingredients. So what's with the high fructose corn syrup? Well, again, it is been genetically modified because it comes from corn. It is many times cheaper and sweeter than sugar, and so they're using it more often, but it does not quench your body's thirst. It's very addictive, and it's linked to weight gain, type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, and heart disease. So it is an additive in many of our foods, especially our drinks, that we really do want to avoid. However, sugar is not always your worst enemy. Most of the time, it is chemicals. Our chemicals come in many forms, and especially the food additives and preservatives. Look at all of those that are many times in not only foods that we eat, but especially in many of our drinks. There's so many food additives. Then we have our artificial sweeteners. None of those are good. None of those artificial colorings are good, as well as the stimulants. We know there's several stimulants. It's not just caffeine, but there's other stimulants that are added that creates the addiction. And there's so many things that are linked to these chemicals. You see sugar and the fact that it is not good, but look at all the other things that are in many of those things that we drink that are even worse. So, what is the bad? First of all, look at our blood sugar and insulin levels. If you look at this chart, you can see how we have these insulin spikes throughout the day, especially based on the foods that we are eating again. If they are high carb foods, then we have more spiking of our insulin levels. If we have our lower carb and higher protein foods or meals, we actually have a much more predictable blood sugar level. And that's what we really, really want, to keep them more in that green level rather than the red level. So the problem is that every time your blood sugar and insulin levels spike, you age. But then also your insulin production decreases. Now, this is something that I had to learn as a young mom. Actually, in my early 20s, I was diagnosed with hypoglycemia. Yes, I loved sugar. I ate a lot of sugar clear back then, and I was taken off of all the sugar due to low blood sugar or hypoglycemia. And what they told me clear back then was eventually it could turn to diabetes. And I'm going, wait a minute, how can low blood sugar turn into high blood sugar, or high insulin turn into low insulin? It just didn't make sense to me until I really understood that the more sugar, the more carbs you eat, the more, eventually your body does not produce insulin. And that's why you can go to this low blood sugar, high insulin, to eventually it just switches. Your body cannot produce insulin, and you have too much of the high blood sugar in your bloodstream, and that can be very dangerous. And that's what diabetes is. So we have to understand that this is a real problem when we overconsume these carbs in the form of grains or sugars. Additionally, we need to understand the difference between insulin and glucagon. Now, I learned this many years ago, and I've taught it many times. And, we rarely hear about glucagon. People say, are you talking about glycogen? And I'm going, no, it's glucagon. These are both hormone partners that are actually made in your pancreas for regulating our blood sugar levels. They're kind of like the yin and the yang. Your pancreas is creating either one or the other, not both at the same time. So for increased insulin, or for your body to produce more insulin naturally, It comes from a diet that's high in processed sugars, high grains, and a lot of your fast foods. And you can see that this is what is creating all those highs and lows. This is what is creating this increased insulin levels. And the result of that is it puts you in fat gain or fat store mode, but it also can clog, pollute, de-energize because they're void of nutrients, and it creates disorder. This is what influences all of our major diseases. And I think that we really need to understand why your body is producing so much insulin. And for people that are diabetics, basically it is because they've eaten such a high diet of sugar and grains or carbs themselves, and your body has overproduced insulin all of these years until finally you get to the point where you can't. What we want to balance this out with is encouraging our body to create more glucagon. This happens when we eat more fresh foods, our fruits and vegetables, especially our vegetables. We need to concentrate more on them. But eating good proteins, lean animal proteins, our raw nuts, and even our plant proteins, but really limiting those carbs and those grains. So this is a diet, look at all the highs and the lows there. We really have higher fiber, vitamins, and minerals. So we're high in more of those foods that we need to be higher in. And this puts our bodies in fat burning mode. And these foods are also really good. They create order because they're cleansers, energizers. They support us, they strengthen and nourish us, and they influence good energy and good health overall. So again, it goes back to what's wrong with the carbs and why we need to really make sure that we are lessening our carb intake and increasing our protein and fresh vegetable intake so that we can have that balance between the insulin and glucagon and ultimately have that balance in our blood sugar levels. Now, what's the good? Well, the good is water is our pure and perfect cleanser. And of course, we want to make sure that we're getting good water that is pure. And that sometimes is, putting on a little bit of extra cost of buying bottled water or installing a reverse osmosis or distiller. I actually prefer the reverse osmosis. I think it's better because it takes out all the bacteria, but it doesn't take all your minerals out. And I think that those are still important. So we want to get good, clean water because that is what our bodies need. And that's what we can look to. And it's a whole lot cheaper than buying all the other drinks that people are drinking. And the results are phenomenal. So here's why we need water: to hydrate ourselves, to replenish our fluids, to increase flow and circulation. This is what will help relieve and prevent pain and inflammation itself. Water also regulates our body's temperature, carries nutrients and oxygen to the cells, lubricates and cushions our joints, and it flushes toxins from our bodies. So if you want to know how much water you need on a daily basis, now this is minimum, not maximum, minimum. You need to take your body's weight and divide that in half. That is the amount of ounces of water you need daily. So for instance, if you weigh 130 pounds, half of that is 65, which is the amount of minimum ounces of water. Now, I've always said though, if you are sick or if you live in a hot climate where you're sweating a lot, or if you are trying to lose weight, drink more than that, because that's super, super important. Again, it's for the flushing your body of excess toxins, and it actually creates more energy when we do this. So generally, we think of our foods are where we're getting our basic nourishment. And so that's why I've always said, eat to nourish, make sure they're good, clean foods. And that's our whole foods, things that are whole food form, right? And then we drink to cleanse with our pure water. Really, really important. Now, it doesn't mean that foods can't be cleansing and water can't be nourishing or drinks nourishing, but it does mean generally this is how we nourish our bodies and how we cleanse our bodies. This should happen on a daily basis because this is what keeps our cells clean and functioning properly. And that's where it all goes back to. It all goes back to our cells. If it's not water, it's not water. I have people tell me all the time, but I drink juice, I drink milk, I drink all these things throughout the day. There's a number of things that people can be drinking, but remember, water is to cleanse. Most of these other drinks that people are drinking are actually acidic and dehydrating. Whereas water, if you get a good pure source, water is neutral, it's hydrating to your cells, and it's also very cleansing. So we want to get water, not all these other drinks. We're talking about pure, clean water. That's where you're going to get the best results. And as people I talk to again are saying, but water is boring. I like something that gives me some benefits and great flavor. And a lot of people make this same comment that they want all the flavors from all these other drinks, but you got to remember what comes with all those flavors is all those chemicals. And those are not what we want. You don't want those chemicals because those pollute and clog your cells, your organs, your joints, and they do not supply you the benefits that you want. You really want the water. What I have found works to not only give you superior benefits and actually accelerate the cleansing, hydrating, balancing, and even alkalizing is by adding pure essential oils to them. And you know that I only use doTERRA's because they do have this supplement fact label on these that say it's safe for internal use. You can add a few drops of essential oils to your water and increase the benefits and add great, great flavors. It's interesting over the years, I've had several people say, I don't like to drink water because it's, just bland and no flavor. And so I have them get a bottle of lemon or wild orange and they report back to me, I'm drinking more water. This is yummy flavors. I love the flavor. And it's like, great. It really does make a difference to get good flavors. Now, also having herbal teas, those are also very cleansing. They're very beneficial for alkalizing and hydrating and cleansing your cells, your organs. And these really support your body in addition. Now, I found with my herbal teas, I like adding a couple of drops of the cinnamon essential oil or wild orange or lemon or grapefruit. These are also great. It even adds more benefits adding the essential oils. So we want to get rid of those drinks that are polluting and clogging our cells and our organs and just get that water or these herbal teas with our pure essential oils that increase those benefits and add great flavors. Then we're really doing our body a lot of good. So people ask me, well, what are safe sweeteners? Well, first of all, there's monk fruit. It is a real fruit. And you can see when they dry it, that's where they get the monk fruit sweetener from. Stevia is another good plant that I've grown in my garden. I love growing stevia. Very, very, very sweet. You can't even eat down a leaf. It's super, super sweet. I have found that my best and I feel like one of the safest sweeteners is a monk fruit stevia blend. And that's usually what I use for a lot of the sweetening that I use when I use sweetening, and I don't use it all the time. But when I want this sweetening, I can use either just drops of concentrated stevia or the monk fruit stevia powder. And I feel like it's a superior choice over a lot of the others out there. Now, I have used erythritol and allulose before, but I found that That and xylitol, they're more of the byproducts of other foods that are being made. So they don't really come from a plant itself. They are kind of byproducts. And so those are not my best choices. However, all of these are no calorie, no glycemic. They won't ruin your blood sugar levels. They don't tax your blood sugar. Okay. Now, people ask me also about honey. Well, what do I feel about honey? Well, I love honey and I do use honey. I had a little bit actually earlier today. And I feel like that's a great sweetener too. That's one of your more natural sweeteners. However, if you buy it in the store, it's usually processed. You want to get the raw honey, make sure, but keep in mind that it's not no glycemic. You do still have the glycemic, the blood sugar fluctuations with honey. So you got to go really easy on your honey, as well as just even eating plain fruits. So keep these in mind as far as what's safe. Now, just to kind of wrap up, I wanted to share a little bit about intermittent fasting, because a lot of people are asking me about intermittent fasting and what it's all about. So basically, this is kind of a diagram of what intermittent fasting is. It's really more about drinking lots of water and minimizing your eating window of time between noon and 7 p.m. So before noon, when you get up in the morning, drink a lot of water. I usually start my day with water. I add my lemon essential oil and I take my enzymes. I love adding my MetaPower in the morning as well. And then I make my herbal teas, but I'm drinking just in the morning. And the herbal teas that I'm drinking and the things that I'm adding, the stevia, are basically no calorie, no carb. So I'm flushing in the morning, and that's really good. So then the next window of hours from noon to 7 p.m., that's when I eat. So I start my first meal at noon, and then I try to make sure that I'm done by 7 p.m. And what this does is it actually limits your blood sugar level fluctuations. And there's so many great benefits from doing that. I'll show you next slide. But after 7 p.m., again, you're just drinking in the evening. Of course, then you're sleeping at night. So that's basically what it is in a nutshell. But look at all the wonderful benefits. First of all, cellular repair. When we keep our eating window at a smaller time and we're drinking more on those off times, we have better cellular repair. It actually really reduces the risk of disease in our heart, our diabetes, cancer, neurological conditions. It combats all of those different microbes, especially in your gut, viruses and bacteria as well. So it protects your brain. It's good for hormone balancing, and it promotes weight loss and fat burning. So there's lots of benefits from keeping your eating window to 7 hours during that 24-hour period. And during those other times, you're just drinking and flushing. And look at all the wonderful benefits in doing that. So the bottom line really, again, is looking at what you are drinking. Is it cleansing or polluting? I feel like the best thing that we can do over anything else is just get that good, pure water, add our lemon essential oil, which comes from the rind. It's not like lemon juice. It's very, very different, but it's very alkalizing and cleansing, pulling those toxins from our cells and from our organs, from our gut. And it really is stimulating our guts to be able to be cleaner and function more efficiently. This is the importance of drinking good drinks. And that really goes back to these two things right there. That's where you're going to get your best benefits. So please let me know what questions you have and send me an email with your name and cell phone number so that we can actually connect. And if you haven't taken that personal wellness assessment, I really encourage you to do that if you feel like you need to do that. because that's a way I can really help you get to the root challenges that you have. So tell me what questions you might have on anything that we discussed here today, especially, but maybe something else that you have in mind.
I have a question, Erleen. So
Sure.
I've also heard that, your bottles of water or, plastic bottles, that it's also a good idea to actually put those through a filtering system. If anything the plastic has leached into that at all.
Mhm.
Is that something that we should be doing?
Actually, that probably would be a good thing, but I tell people just don't drink out of plastic water bottles.
Oh,
They are not good. Try every way that you can just to avoid the plastic water bottles. Now, if you're buying water in the 5-gallon water bottles, then that's completely different because it's a different type of plastic than your regular, 8, 12, 16 ounces of water bottles. Those are completely different than the 5-gallon ones. The plastic is definitely different. So if you can avoid drinking out of plastic water bottles, period, it's so much better. And you'll notice if you've had some in the pantry for, a few months and you go and drink it, it just tastes like you're drinking plastic. So the longer it's in there, the more plastic it absorbs. And they tell us that, since we've started drinking water bottles, yeah, we've drank more water, but we're drinking more plastic too. And that's really the petrochemicals in our cells that we don't need. Well, I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you again for joining me. And I look forward to having you on each week.